focus right there. Now, already I've been battling with angle grinders and pickaxes and Lord knows what out there for the duration of the making of this video. The computer's crashed twice. I've recorded clips that I know I'm going to drop in earlier, which have got loud angle grinders in the background. So if you can't put up with that, get off my cloud, because I haven't got time to do this another time. I'm running out of time. So yeah, that's why there's loads of background noise. Now, so there's a new Matrix movie out. What's it called? Matrix Regurgitations. We'll go with that because it is that. So, spoiler alert, in case you don't know, in the Matrix Regurgitations, turns out that Neo is actually John Wick, and he was a computer games programmer who made a game called The Matrix. So all the previous games are essentially the "it was all a dream" trope. So they never happened. But someone was very much inspired by this game and he's actually made it happen. Or is this real? Ooh. Has it gone meta? Ooh. And in the Critical Drinker and in Morgoth's video, most of the material, most of the analysis is found in between the difference between the first Matrix movie and Matrix John Wick Regurgitations. And I find that a little bit strange. Morgoth at one point, they're both good analysis, I'm not digging them out, but at one point Morgoth describes it as iconic, but you know, iconic is just marketing. You know, Andy Warhol was iconic. Why? Because we were told he was. You know, Banks is iconic because we've been told he was. You know, people have put money and time into telling us what's iconic. That's how that kind of thing works. You know, rarely does something become iconic without people putting a lot of money, time and planning into it. Such is the nature of our barbarically meaningless culture. But all of the ideas in the Matrix are old hat. And not only are they old hat, they're dealt with very badly. I mean, we can go back to what, 1640, 1650? René Descartes, Delboy-Cartes, and he published his Meditationes de Prima Philosophia, published about 10 years later in the French Méditations Métaphysiques. And that's quite a cool thing. Let's have a look at what metaphysique actually means. Hang on a minute. Right, the internet has given us this. Metaphysics is a branch of philosophy that studies the first principles of being, identity and change, space and time, causality, necessity and possibility. It includes questions about the nature of consciousness and the relationship between mind and matter. Now, in Delboy-Cartes' famous meditations, of course, he wrote, "Cogito ergo sum," I think, therefore I am. And what he's essentially saying there is that consciousness implies existence, one's existence. This is halfway through the 16th century. You know, it's 15th century. I never work out how that works, clearly. Did it show? Did half of you go, hang on? and yet, even in literature this has been dealt with. Lewis Carroll dealt with this. Let's have a look. So, reading from Lewis Carroll, Sylvie and Bruno concluded. It was Carroll's last novel, I think, published in 1889. Here we go. What a useful thing a pocket map is, I remarked. That's another thing we've learned from your nation, said Meinherr. Map making. But we've carried it much further than you. What do you consider the largest map that would be really useful? About 6 inches to the mile. Only 6 inches? Exclaimed Mine-Her. We very soon got to 6 yards to the mile. Then we tried 100 yards to the mile. And then came the grandest idea of all. We actually made a map of the country on the scale of a mile to the mile. Have you used it much? I inquired. It has never been spread out yet, said Mine-Her. The farmers objected. They said it would cover the whole country and shut out the sunlight. So now we use the country itself as its own map. And I assure you it does nearly as well. And then, of course, Jorge Borges and Baudrillard. And the Baudrillard connection is so cringe. John Baudrillard is like a pop philosopher. You know, I've heard people put Baudrillard in the same basket as Derrida, Foucault, Christophe, Lacan, Hegel. It's like, what? Are you really? You know, it's chatter. It's chatter. Now, his book Cool Memories is one of the best books ever written. Get it, put it in your toilet, jump into it, aphorisms, lovely. That's what he's good at. But all his fatal strategies, all his desert of the real, yeah, that's one of his. You might remember that from the first Matrix movie.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
You know, I had a tutor at art school say to me once, I've lost count of the amount of art students who've failed their degrees on the back of thinking Baudrillard was worth reading. And even in the introduction, even in the opening scenes to The Matrix, you see Baudrillard's book, Simulations Simulacra and Simulations. And Simulation or something. He deals his digital drugs from it. Oh, what are they saying there? Are we being dealt digital drugs from The Matrix? No, we're just watching a fucking Hollywood movie that's trite, riddled with cliches, and does a very, very superficial reading of a very, very superficial book on simulations, on reality, on metaphysics. So let's read from Baudrillard's book, Simulacra and Simulation, which opens with a quote from Ecclesiastes. The simulacrum is never that which conceals the truth. It is the truth which conceals that there is none. The simulacrum is true. And then Baudrillard continues, if we were able to take as the finest allegory of simulation the Borges tale, he's referring there to the Argentinian writer Jorge Borges. So if we would be able to take as the finest allegory of simulation the Borges tale, where the cartographers of the empire draw up a map so detailed that it ends up exactly covering the territory, but where, with the decline of the empire, this map becomes frayed and finally ruined, a few shreds still discernible in the deserts. The metaphysical beauty of this ruined abstraction bearing witness to an imperial pride and rotting like a carcass, returning to the substance of the soil, rather as an aging double ends up being confused with the real thing. This fable would then have come full circle for us, and now has nothing but the discreet charm of second-order simulacra. Abstraction today is no longer that of the map, the double, the mirror, or the concept. Simulation is no longer that of a territory, a referential being, or a substance. It is the generation by models of a real without origin or reality, a hyperreal. The territory no longer precedes the map, nor survives it. Henceforth, it is the map that precedes the territory. Precession of simulacra. It is the map that engenders the territory. And if we were to revive the fable today, it would be the territory whose shreds are slowly rotting across the map. It is the real, and not the map, whose vestiges subsist here and there, in the deserts which are no longer those of the empire, but our own. The desert of the real itself. I mean, forget your Lewis Carrolls, forget your Del Boy Carts, forget your Wicks regurgitations. Let's have a look at the one paragraph story by Jorge Borges called On Exactitude in Science that nailed the whole Matrix thing just so beautifully, succinctly, poetically 78 years ago. Just effortlessly. Jorge Borges. Incredible. In that empire, the art of cartography attained such perfection that the map of a single province occupied the entirety of a city, and the map of the empire the entirety of a province. In time, those unconscionable maps no longer satisfied, and the cartographers' guilds struck a map of the empire whose size was that of the empire, and which coincided point for point with it. The following generations, who were not so fond of the study of cartography as their forebears had been, saw that the vast map was useless, and not without some pitilessness was it that they delivered it up to the inclemencies of sun and winters. In the deserts of the West, still today, there are tattered ruins of that map, inhabited by animals and beggars. In all the land there is no other relic of the disciplines of geography. I just find the whole thing a little bit cringe that anyone even bought into the first film. I mean, it's alright, it's entertaining, there's some nice shots, run around the walls and fire, bullet time. But did anyone really, if anyone started questioning the metaphysics of life, if anyone started questioning reality off the back of the Matrix, my guess is they stopped about an hour later. This is culture industry trash. It's trash, and that's all it is. So to get to the Matrix regurgitations and go, look at the difference between that one and this one, I think you've missed something there. Anyone who thinks that has missed something. I think the only thing you can say is, well, it was better the first time because I hadn't seen it already. I will not get caught in these traps. Hollywood is jank. It's alright if you want entertaining, and that's it.
Sweet, sweet.